All right, this is the debut of the pond. I'm really excited about this video because it's been a long time coming and it's going to be a long one. It's going to be very specific for the people who are interested in this type of project. And my channel in general is not about this, but I'll be putting this video on there as well as a bunch of other videos that I'll talk about. And so don't expect this channel to be all about this pond, but I want to get it out there to help people who are interested in this kind of thing. So that's why I'm doing this. And I have some notes so I don't get lost in my thoughts. Hopefully keep it organized, talk about everything that people care about if they're interested in this type of project. Try and be helpful to the community out there that is doing this, because they were super helpful for me while I was doing this, and I really appreciate it. All right, so if you're not into ponds and organic swimming pools and stuff, this is probably not your video. And the first thing I wanted to talk about was why the pond. And not everybody calls these kinds of structures ponds, but that's what we've grown to call it. So that's what I'll be referring to it as. But that's the question that most people start with, is why this? Why not a swimming pool? We considered a swimming pool, and we were actually getting quotes and stuff for swimming pools. And then about the time, this was a few years ago, about the time that we were getting quotes, I had an incident at a pool where I got chlorine burns in my sinuses, and that was a first for me. And so I started doing research and looking at the whys of all that, and then found some of the natural alternatives to swimming pools, and have since fallen in love and created my own. So generally speaking, these types of structures are cheaper, and in some cases way cheaper than a conventional swimming pool. So that's one reason to do these. I'll talk about the cost of this one in a little more detail in a minute, but this is about a $25,000 structure. And something like this, if you're doing it professionally or like in a traditional swimming pool type of design, it's going to be somewhere between $100,000 and $250,000, depending. So it's much cheaper. The maintenance is lower, and I'll be talking about that as well. So the maintenance on this one has decreased significantly since the first year, and it's not zero maintenance yet, but it probably will be pretty soon, because this is still considered a very young pond. This is not mature by any stretch. Other things that drew us to this solution were that it's beautiful, and pools kind of lose their magic. They lose their beauty after you've been around something like this for a while. These are much more beautiful than a traditional swimming pool. And I was pretty convinced before we ever started the project that this was going to be kind of a centerpiece of our home once it was done. And that has held true. We spend a ton of time in our backyard, way more time in our backyard now that this is here. We really enjoy our time in the backyard, and it has become kind of a place that we frequent. We come out here and kind of walk around like I just did, just checking on things and seeing what's changed, and looking at all the different wildlife that's out here in the ecosystem, and it's super fun. We really enjoy this as a centerpiece of our activities on a daily basis. Okay, so I'm going to give you a quick tour of the pond, and then we're going to go through some of the construction. Here, let me look at my list. Yeah, in case you can't tell by now, I'm not into editing, so I won't be editing this video very heavily. So sorry if you're into that, if you need that. But again, this is for the pond enthusiasts. So if you're not into this, this probably isn't your video. Okay, construction. I'm going to go through a tour of the pond and then construction, including pricing, and then filtration and how all the cleaning works. And then I talk through plants, including the algae and the wildlife. And then some of the architecture in more detail, like the cement structure and stuff. Water temperature, the pros, the cons, what would I do differently, and the things I did right. Okay, so a tour of the pond. So this area around the edge is a gravel bed. It's about 1.5 feet deep. And the gravel bed is called the planted area, the planted zone. And it is the filtration zone. It goes all the way around. In the middle is the deep zone. In the middle there, it's 8 feet deep. And it's tapered like a cone. So it's 8 feet deep there, and it's about 5 feet deep there. So there's that 3-foot slope. So the swim zone, planted zone, a little plank dock, and the dock piers are just setting on top of the gravel. Floating planter. There are perforated landscaping drain pipes underneath the gravel, and then these bubble pumps come up, pull water up through the pipes, through the gravel, and circulate the water. Everything in the design is based on a man's design from England. His name is David Pagan Butler, and I think he calls his channel Organic Swimming Pools. Organic swimming pools. But these go by a few different names. Some people call them organic pools or natural swimming pools or natural swimming ponds. But the design is from David Pagan Butler. And then I did a few things differently, but basically followed everything that he did as far as how it works, how it keeps the water clean and clear. On the side here, you see a little curb that goes around, and there's a liner, a rubber liner under everything, and the liner comes up and under that curb and wraps around the curb and then down back on the back side. You can't see it because it's encased in cement, but there's a waterproof membrane all through that. So there's 3 bubble pumps right there, 3 bubble pumps right there. I'll talk about exactly where they all go. This is our overflow. So when it rains, we get 20 inches of rain a year or whatever, and it fills up, and then the overflow drains back into here, and there's a drain in the back over there that's been there since the construction of the property that takes the water out to a retention pond, and then takes the water out to the rainwater drain, the natural drain out to the river and out to the ocean. These pipes right here are air hoses. They go back to the air manifold. They go back to an air pump that's in my garage. This filter system was how I was topping off the pond water level last year. I'm no longer using that. Got some recommendations that maybe that wasn't a good idea to put RO water in the pond. And then you see the little cable, that's just a grounding strap that has a little steel plate in the water. That's something that the county required. And then the grounding post right there. And then there's extra hose up on the fence that I'll use on a regular basis for my vacuuming system. So this is my vacuum that I use every few weeks to vacuum out the bottom. Takes like 30 minutes. And then, and that's a pretty cool system. I have some other videos on it. And then a little net and some cleaning stuff to just clean up as we go. When we see clumps of algae floating around. And let me say real quick on the videos. So I have, I don't know, at least 100 videos, maybe a couple hundred videos of the different phases of the project. I have, most of them are shorts where you can see the different phases of what's going on. And I have them in the description of this video. And so if you want to go watch those, you'll have to go to the description. I don't think I have a playlist that you'll be able to find on my channel. They're just in the description of this video, and then you'll find the playlist there. So you can watch those if you're into the construction of it or want to see the different ideas. This is the skimmer. I was really glad that I put this skimmer in. It's worked out super well. So I'll go through how that works. And then you can kind of see the construction of the pond a little bit better. So there's a big hole that was dug out and a little tiny retaining wall right here. And that retaining wall keeps the gravel from pouring into the deep end. So this is a concrete wall. And then it slopes up a little bit more to here, and then that is the curb edging. And these two planted areas are bigger, right here and over there. So typically, David's designs would have kind of the same profile around a pond. And I decided that I wanted to have a kind of a kiddie pool area. And so I made 2 of them, and it's worked out really well. The small kids love this area. They hang out in this area a lot, and it serves them very well. And then that one over there, I'm gonna be making more floating planters because I really like those. That's worked out really well. But this was a really good idea, having a bigger area so that it's not just a deep end, because a lot of the ponds end up being basically deep end only once all the plants come in, because these plants are going to fill in most of the planted area eventually. And then it becomes just a plunge pool, which is a lot of fun, but the kids don't really have a good place. The small kids don't have a good place to swim. So this area will be kept clear so that the tiny kids have a place to swim, which they've already enjoyed extensively. So that's been a lot of fun. Yeah, so the dock is floating. It's not really anchored to anything. It's just sitting there. It's sitting on the curb. It's sitting on the wet wall down there. So that's been a really great addition. Otherwise, you'd have to go through the planted zone every time you get to the deep end, and that got old pretty quick. All right, next chapter. So the construction, this is something that is obviously one of the first questions you get, because you need to know how much it's going to cost, how much time it's going to take, etc. So when we finally got to the point where we were committed to building the pond, we were basically ready to go that day. I had done so much planning and so much preparing that by the time we got the green light, I wanted to do it now. And so I did not take the time to dig my own hole by hand or by renting my own equipment or anything like that. I hired somebody to do it for me, and that turned out to be a great idea. That was the first decision I made and the best decision I made, because I paid somebody $3,000 to come in and dig the hole, and they did it with such precision that I barely needed to do any kind of work afterwards to get it ready. There was no like shaping or backfilling, or I guess there was. There was very little shaping and backfilling. It was wonderful. They carved out a perfect circle. Their slopes were great. They cleared out a little bit of edging on the sides so that I had room to work with my curb. Even these areas where I said, I want it to be a kind of a unique, non-linear shape right here, and they just nailed it, and it was absolutely amazing. So that was a great idea, because they did that in one day. They dug this hole, and so after that, it was me doing a bunch of custom work that you really can't hire people to do very well, because it's not something that people around here are going to be familiar with. And so I did it all myself after that, with the help of some friends. I had some amazing friends that dedicated a few afternoons to some of the heavy lifting parts of the project. So because the hole was dug in a day, I got through that pretty quick, and then I set a goal to be rain proof by the time the rains hit, which gave me about 3 months, and I hit my deadline just on time. So 3 months from the time that the hole was dug everything was rainproofed, which means that I had all of the fine-tuning of the digging done, and I had the liner in, and I could fill the liner with water on the bottom so it pulls the liner down into place. So that took 3 months because there was a little bit of shaping, a little bit of concrete work, trying to reinforce and make sure the liner's not going to go anywhere, make sure dirt's not going to be shifting around over the years. So 3 months to rainproof. And then after the liner was in, we built the wet wall here, this concrete wall, and did the piping and the gravel and filled up with water, and then did plants, and then did this perimeter curbing wall, and then had to fix the grass and the sprinklers and stuff. And so the rest of that, after the 3 months to get it waterproof, the rest of that was a lot less stressful because it was now rainproofed and I could take my time. So all in all, from the time that we dug the hole to the time where we were kind of calling it finished was a long time. That was probably close to 8 or 10 months, depending on where you draw the line. But we were swimming in it at about 6 months, meaning the kids could get in and get wet after about 6 months. But it still definitely wasn't done. I mean, even now I kind of like tweak things here and there, but I haven't changed much in, I don't know, it's been several months now. It's been probably 6 months since I've really changed anything. It's like 6 months ago I put the dock in, I think. And that was probably the last big change that I did as far as the usability of the pond. Okay, so to be able to get to the point where I put water in the liner to pull it straight and was basically rainproof, that was about $15,000 to get to that point, which again took about 3 months. So that was definitely the most intense part, was that first 3 months, getting everything together, and then getting to the point where it's rainproofed, and then spending that $15,000. So that's most of the money, or more than half of the money, and most of the work. Like in those 3 months, I put in a ton of hours. I have a list somewhere of the hours that I put in, but it was a few hundred hours in the first 3 months. And then after that, I dialed way back and took it slower and was more relaxed about it. And the price breakdown for the $15,000, so $3,000 for the hole, and $5,000 for the liner, because I got a nice liner, a lifetime liner. And the rest of it was basically concrete work. So I got concrete, got the fiberglass rebar, tools, cement mixer, things like that. So all of that added up to $15,000 just to be able to get like good structural integrity and good waterproofing. And so that was kind of the first phase. And then after that, it was another $10,000 to get to this point. So $10,000 would include the rest of the little concrete wall right here on the top. It would include, little concrete and the wood and the little pavers and permeable pavers. It includes the dock and the wood there. It includes the plants. The plants I spent almost $1,000 on plants because I really wanted good plants. And so I found a nursery that had some great plants, great expertise, hundreds of varieties. And so I went all out on that and really got some stuff that I liked. I have a bunch of irises. I have not committed to the water lilies yet, but I really like the way things are turning out so far. Obviously it's got holes in different places. It's not like it's fully grown in yet, but being the second spring that I've had the plants, it is really cool to see the plants come in. It's really fun. And so I don't regret spending the money on those, even though I would do it a little bit differently. And the gravel I got for, it wasn't too expensive, but it's still, a couple $1,000s for a bunch of gravel. And so the idea with this is that I kind of started with this goal of spending $15,000 on the entire project. And before I ever started, I talked to a few people, told them what I was doing, told them what I was thinking and the pricing and stuff, and they were like, it's going to cost you more. And talking to them, they basically suggested it's going to cost you twice as much as you think. And so I started like changing my goal around and stuff. So $25,000 was definitely not a surprise, especially as time went on. I could just kind of see it and feel it. It wasn't a surprise that it cost me $25,000. But I also made several decisions to not go the cheap route and to do things what I thought was a better way, or a more reliable way, or more usable way. And I do not regret that. I spent money on things that I didn't have to. And in the end, it turned out really well. And so I think that the $25,000 is well spent. At least, for what I get. Okay. So how much gravel? It's 24 yards of gravel. And it's more gravel than we need, but that's fine. I'd rather have a little bit more than a little bit less. I probably could have got away with, 22 yards of gravel or something, but it's 24 yards of gravel, about, not precise measurements. But let's see, it was 10 yards of 1 inch gravel that is underneath this pea gravel. So 10 yards of bigger gravel underneath, and then 14 yards of pea gravel, and those 2 loads of 7 yards apiece. So 24 yards total. So it's a ton of gravel, but the gravel is where the beneficial bacteria lives. Like, that is your cleaning resource. You have to have all that gravel to get good filtration. And it has worked. We are moving quite a bit of water through the gravel, but the gravel and the pumps and everything will clean the water in a 12-hour cycle easily. Like, the kids were thrashing around in this yesterday, and it's already crystal clear. It's got, probably 20 feet of clarity or something like that. And so it cleans the water super well. When the kids start jumping in, it only takes a few minutes for the water to stir up and like little bits of debris or algae or whatever start floating around. And so you're like, oh wow, the water's getting really cloudy, which, the clarity goes down to like 10 feet. And so it seems dirty compared to what it is right now, which is crystal clear. But honestly, after an hour of them not swimming, you can see the bottom just fine, and it looks really good. And then after 12 hours, it's like nothing happened. So you go to bed that night and you wake up in the morning like now, and it's like nobody was ever swimming in it. So the filtration works great. I've now moved on to the filtration section of the video. So we're done with the construction part of it for now. I might show some more details. Well, I don't know. There's a lot of details that I won't go through. Like this over here is my construction idea folder, not to include all of the different stuff I did on the computer and the modeling and calculation stuff I did on the computer, but you can see all the different stuff I was playing with in the making of the design, trying to figure out how all this stuff was going to work. And a lot of the stuff that's in here I did not go with because I just decided on a better design, but this was me just working things out. So this notebook is just full. All right. So I would highly recommend that if you are going to take on this kind of project, you do that. You do take the time to be very careful and planful. Do your calculations, think about it for a long time, make sure you're committed, because this is not a small project, this is not a small endeavor, this is actually quite a heavy lift. Probably the craziest thing I've ever done as far as construction and like physical projects and stuff. All right, the filtration. So I talked about 24 yards of gravel. So underneath the gravel, it's a very typical David Pagan Butler setup. So it's got 3-inch perforated landscaping drain pipe in a coil or in a circle, and then thick gravel on top of that, or meaning like 3/4, 1 inch gravel. And then the landscaping barrier to kind of be a weed barrier. And then on top of that is the pea gravel. So the water is being pulled down through the pea gravel, through the barrier, through the 1 inch gravel, and down into the landscaping drains, collected under there, and then sucked over here into these pipes and pulled up through the bubble pumps. This pond system runs on 100 watts. And I thought that was going to be a little bit weak, but it's a little bit strong. 100 watts is probably a little bit more than I need. I'll probably get a 60 watt pump and see if that would be any different. Because I want to have a backup anyway, just in case my 100, from when my 100 watt breaks or needs repair, I can just plug in a 60 watt, a backup. And the way these work is better explained on David Pagan Butler's channel, but I'm using his, I can't remember, enhanced, I think he calls it enhanced bubble pump. So the pipes actually, the bubble pumps start, the depth of them starts at about 5 feet down, and they draw water up. And so they're moving quite a bit of water, and they still need to be balanced a little bit. Like you can see, this one's stronger than that one. And it's just because the way the pipes are run, they kind of have different preferences. Is the air going straight, or does it have to make a 90-degree turn? And the 90-degree turns in the piping creates a little bit of resistance, and so the air balance isn't quite exact, but it's doing a great job. One thing that was super important that I did not know in advance, but again, it's one of those things where I was thinking about it and was wondering, and I decided, you know what, it's not going to hurt. I'll just go with this kind of different design. You can see a fish. Yeah. Sorry, David, but I put fish in here. I put white cloud mountain minnows in there. No regrets so far. We'll see. One thing that I did not regret doing is putting 3/8 inch air hose in the pond. Most people are putting 1/4 inch, and for some reason it just didn't quite set well with me. And so I did 3/8, and that turned out to be a great idea. So I would not recommend doing 1/4 inch. You just to get much better airflow. And here's why I say that. I have an air pressure gauge right here that tells me what the air pressure is on my system. So right now it's just under 3 psi. If I was to replace all of this with 1/4 inch hoses, it would easily be over 4 psi. And these pumps have a rating, a psi rating that they want to run at in order to maintain longevity on the pump membrane. For this one, it's like 3.2 to 3.8 psi. So if it's running at about 3.5 psi, they say that it'll last like 10 years, the pumps. And so this one is running, right now it's running just under 3. In the winter, it runs a little bit higher, like 3.5, because everything constricts, contracts and gets a little bit smaller, and therefore a little more resistance on the system. So the 3/8 inch hosing, I'm convinced, contributed to the decrease in PSI and the longevity of my pump by quite a bit. So I'm really glad that I did that. This is the manifold, and this manifold is something that I found. It's basically it's a jacuzzi manifold for like air or water pressure systems in jacuzzis, and I just adapted it for this. And so I have 8 pipes hooked up that go wherever I want them to go, and then I have these valves to turn everything off and on. So when I want to do my vacuum, I hook up my vacuum to this one. So I turn this one on. You can see the vacuum air coming out now. Pressure drops a little bit. And then I turn the other ones off. So if I turn these off, which actually I'll do it in a second. So I'll turn those ones off, and then I get a whole bunch of air into my vacuum system. I don't have to go rerouting and plugging stuff in and all this. So this works really great. I've thought about making this all automated for different use cases, and I just haven't convinced myself that that's necessary. But I have a 3/4 inch hose from my pump coming to this manifold, breaking out into a whole bunch of 3/8 inch hoses and creating a very controllable air system for me that I have used and been very grateful for. And this is just off of one of the outlets for the manifold. So yeah, this whole thing with the air has been a great idea. The pump is in my garage, by the way. This 3/4 hose goes all the way back to the other side of the property and is in my garage. So if you go into my garage, you hear this little hum. You can just barely hear it because it's in a cabinet. But I don't have a pump sitting out here by the pond to get wet and sunburned. And it's not a noise maker out here. It's back in the garage where I don't mind having a little bit of noise. So again, great idea. And don't mind these other hoses. This is other projects and things. Okay, I'm gonna turn on, so these are just like not plugged into anything. So I'm gonna turn on this as a release valve so the air pressure is not going to the pond anymore. And I'll leave these ones on because I don't need to turn them off. So pressure will drop significantly, but I'll do a lap around the pond so you can see the bottom a little more clear when the water is still. When the water is still, because the bubble pumps are not on. Okay. So the pipes underneath the gravel are 3-inch pipes, and they come over to the outlets. The outlets are also 3-inch pipes. And then for my enhanced bubble pump, you can look at my short on that, and I have them out of the pond. You can see them better. But those are 5-inch pipes. So I have 3-inch pipes inside of 5-inch pipes for my enhanced bubble pumps as designed by David Pagan Butler. And you can see, algae builds up a little bit right there, but that would take me, if I plugged in the vacuum right now to clean that out, that would take me probably 15 minutes to clean out. And I'm not gonna do it. I'll wait a couple more weeks before I do that. Okay. One thing that's interesting about my design, and I wasn't sure if this was going to work out, but I put in the risers here for the pumps and the risers over there. So basically 2 risers. Most other designs follow David Pagan Butler's design exactly, and they'll stagger the pipes all the way around. And at the outlets, they'll stagger them all the way around so that there's kind of like this even distribution of outlets. And I didn't want that because I knew that the kids were going to be in this a lot. They were going to be trashing and thrashing, and I didn't want them bumping and breaking and pulling and moving the outlets. I didn't have to want them navigating the outlets or being aware of where they are. And so instead I would put a coil of pipe for filtration, and then instead of popping it up right at the base of the circle, I would pull the outlet to the side and then pop it up like I did. I think that turned out to be a better design. And the pipes run under the gravel, like I said, we're underneath this little pier for the plank. They poke through the perimeter wall right here, 1, 2, 3, and then they come up. And so the kids only have to deal with this outlet and the outlet on the other side. That one they don't hardly ever touch just because it's not really a play zone. This one is a play zone because of the plank right here, but they hardly ever touch the pipes because they're jumping off over the plank, over the pipes right here. So if a kid was to like fall down or whatever, like slip off, they might land on the pipes. But those pipes actually are not secured in there. They can be pulled out and removed quite easily. Can you see the fish? Hey, little minnows. They don't get very big. That's about as big as they'll ever get. So those pop out really easily. When the kids are playing around, they actually pop out every once in a while, and then we just put them back in whenever we get a chance. It's not that big a deal if they pop out, because when they pop out, let's see if I can show this side better. When they pop out, they disconnect right here at the top. So the bubble pumps are still working. They just lose about 2 feet of their effective pull. So they're still moving water, the pumps are still going, and the enhanced part that goes down, the white part down below, that doesn't come out. It's just this top little snorkel piece that comes out. So it's not that big a deal. So I'm glad that I did that. Personally, I mean, maybe there's advantages that I'm not thinking of to having the different ones that pop up around the edges. But I'm glad that the kids only have to deal with 2 outlets, and I'm glad that the outlets are friendly for the kids and not, dangerous or, going to be at risk of impaling somebody or something like that. Okay. One of the things about the outlets, because they're not secured in there, is that I can turn them. I put these in little 90-degree bends in them so they kind of direct water. So when I turn back on, you'll be able to see it again. But right now I've got them pointed towards the center. So these ones point to the middle, those ones point to the middle. And in the beginning I thought, well, it would be kind of better for circulation and filtration if I pointed these ones, I think I'm that way, pointed them that way and pointed those ones that way, so it creates this whirlpool effect. And so I did that for months, and in the end decided it wasn't a good idea, because it actually created a lot of flow. Like if we had an inner tube in the pond, you could sit here and watch it go around for hours, but it was enough flow that it would circle the whole pond in just like a minute or two, and then it would kind of stress out some of the plants. Like I have some poppies over there, and then some floating hearts over here, and some other like little oxygenating plants and stuff like that. And the water circulation was fast enough, or the water whirlpool effect was fast enough that it was stressing out the plants. It was like pulling on them. At least in my mind, that's what it was. And so I decided that was a little much. If I had like trout in here or something, then maybe that would be a good idea, but it turned out to be a little much. And so I pointed them towards the middle, which is David's suggestion, and that works out pretty well. It doesn't seem to stress out the plants. Filtration seems to work a little bit better, and the surface surface tensions of the water and stuff seem to be a little bit more friendly. It definitely has more of like a waterfall effect, which I didn't expect. Like there's a lot of water flow, even though everything's getting pushed to the middle. And so you see the animals that care about flow use that. Like you'll see tadpoles, frogs, toads, fish, and everything. You'll see them kind of use the currents to their advantage if they're looking for things to flow past them, or if they're looking to get pushed somewhere, then they'll kind of jump into the currents and use that. Anyway, so I thought that was interesting. Some wildlife like the flow, and some of them don't. We don't have shrimp, but if we had shrimp, they would be using the flow quite a bit. Okay, so we're still on filtration. Let's do the skimmer. I'm going to turn the pumps back on, and then we'll do the skimmer. All right, just close that one valve from before. The skimmer has proven to be a wonderful idea. It does a great job of keeping the surface very clean and clear. And if we turn the skimmer off, it doesn't make the surface nasty really quick, but after a couple of days, you can see kind of a film start to develop. And so you turn the skimmer on, and the skimmer only takes about an hour to clean the whole surface of the pond. And I don't have to think about it. I don't have to do much with it. And if I forget to clean it out or something, it just stays dirty. It doesn't like hurt the pumps or anything. It just isn't cleaning the surface of the pond until I clean it out. And I have to clean it out about once every 2 days. I try to do it about once a day so that it stays active and pulls a lot of water in, but about every other day. And I've gone through, this is probably the thing that I've tinkered the most with. And it started out cleaning it out multiple times a day. I mean, I could clean it out probably once an hour when I first put it in and started playing with it. And over time, I've changed the filters quite a bit. I've changed the design of the bobber system. I just 3D printed this baffle plate to try and slow down the bobbing effect, so it has a little more even pull, which has worked out really well. I've got some more ideas. I've got about 3 more ideas I want to prototype and try, because I think the more I tweak, well, I know the more I tinker with it, the less I have to maintain it. And so I'm trying to get to a place where I can clean it out maybe like once a week would be great. But this is probably the thing that is the most maintenance heavy right now, is that once every 2 days, I come out here and I clean out the filter, which takes probably like 3 or 4 minutes. And I'll show you the filter sock, because I had a normal filter sock that you can just buy online, and I was cleaning that out way too often. It was one of these materials, and that material just gets clogged up really easily with algae. And so I cut it up and I put in the mesh, and the mesh catches the algae just fine, and it lets through all of these other fine particles that I don't care about catching. Like, I don't really care if I catch, you know, bacteria and little bits of dirt or whatever. Like, I'm mostly just trying to catch algae. And so this is what's in there right now, and I'll go pull that out so you can see it. So I clean that out. It takes me a couple minutes. Do that every other day. And then one of the things that I want to do is see if I can create a top end for the bob that does a better job. That string, that's just a weight to a bag of rocks down there that's helping keep things in place. But this just comes out like that. And by the way, the reason I played with this design so much, you have to have the floating foam, whatever flotation device in your skimmer, you have to have it on the inside of your pipe. That is essential to the design. So this is like a neoprene pad basically, and that is on the inside of the pipe intentionally. And then this is just a baffle, like I said, to slow down the bobbing, because if I took the baffle off, it would kind of like do this motion in the water where it moves too fast, and so the baffle kind of slows it down where it controls the pull a little better. So this is, again, a 3-inch pipe, or 4-inch, I think that's a 4-inch pipe. And this is my filtration sock that has caught all the algae, and it's about half full right now. Oh, look at all the leaves and stuff. It catches tadpoles, find all kinds of stuff in there. I'll put it back for now. I'm not prepared to clean it out. Catches all kinds of stuff, beetles and stuff, and then I just go dump it in that bucket over there. But yeah, this pipe, if I remember right, it's a 4-inch pipe that goes down to a 3-inch, basically an ABS toilet drain elbow. And then that pipe goes under the gravel all the way around and ejects over there. So the outlet for my skimmer is right here, or over there, and the inlet's right here. So it's effectively making a pull across the pond, a slow pull across the pond, which was intentional. I didn't want the outlet to be right here. Like, if you had your outlet there and your inlet there, you're basically just creating a little cycle right here that's not really going to be as effective as you'd like to be. So I intentionally put on the other side of the pond to pull it and make somewhat of a water current that comes across. And you'll see it'll kind of bob for a second, and then the baffle will kind of slow it down. And then if I put my finger on it for a minute, it comes to a resting place of equilibrium, and then it'll just kind of stay there for a while until one of the kids does a cannonball, and then it'll go back to bobbing around a little bit. But yeah, that baffle's helped a lot with that bobbing. So that's really cool. Oh, and you can see down there, I have a little copper coil. That was an experiment. I haven't decided if that's a good idea or not. But a copper coil is supposed to help with the algae, and it definitely helps with the algae right there. Like right around the copper coil, there's really not been any algae. But of course, I still get it all over the pond, so I don't really know what to make of that. This outer area This is just like one of those big plastic barrels, which is why it's kind of deformed, is because the rocks push on it, you know. But that's just to create some space where my skimmer can bob around without being impacted by the rocks. Like if it was just in the rocks, obviously it would not be bobbing around. It wouldn't be free to do that. So that's why this. I have had a concern that some kid's gonna accidentally like step in there and twist his ankle or something. Hasn't happened yet. I don't really know how to get around that. So we'll see if that ever comes up. It's also a favorite place for some of the animals to hide out. Like toads will go down in there and stuff. Oh, we have some toad eggs. They just got laid a couple days ago. I should go show you guys. All right, let's look at my list. So I think that's it on the cleaning, the filtration part of it. David has a lot more information that you can play with, and there's a lot of other people that do the similar designs. But those are the things that I think have worked out and the things I'm still working on for the filtration side. Okay, now plants. Plants was probably one of the areas that I underestimated the most. I went to the plant lady at the nursery and I was like, here's my situation. And she recommended some and I kind of knew what I wanted and I did my own research online, blah, blah, blah. Turns out that this pond would be considered a deep water pond. Meaning, if I went back knowing what I know now and was to order plants, I would not order any bog plants, basically. Anything that was that couldn't survive 6 inches of water, because all these plants are under 6 inches of water in the winter. And so there was a handful of plants that I didn't know couldn't survive underwater, and so they died. Not a lot of them, but a handful of them. So I would get more, like this is a hawthorn. That one does really well. I would have got more of that because it's deep water. Would have got more of the poppies, more of the floating hearts, because those are deep water. The lilies have done okay, but they're kind of on the edge where you could tell they would appreciate having less water. The pickerels do great so far. They like the deep water. I'm surprised how much I like these little cattails. These are like some kind of a mini cattail, miniature cattail. And I've been scared of cattails because I've grown up with cattails clogging up ditches and canals. Look, here's the toad eggs that were just laid. Looks like they got fertilized just fine. Good job, you guys. That's the 10th lay. No, this is the 11th. This is the 11th lay of toad eggs this year. Last year we had 1, this year we have 11. So that's been interesting to see. But yeah, I was worried that these were going to get out of control. And the lady warned me that they might get out of control. But I've really liked the way these look. I like the height. I like the color. They grow pretty early in the season, so that's really cool. So I think I probably would have gotten 1 more of these, but I'm also kind of worried that they still might get out of control and just take over everything. So we'll see. This is a 3 square rush. It's done fine. I can't remember what these are called, but these are really popular. You guys will know the name of them. Those seem to do fine. This is a hibiscus. What's the name of it? Yeah, hibiscus. Yeah. This is a water hibiscus, which I was kind of worried about because it dies back in the winter, but it seems to be growing back fine in the spring. And it's not supposed to be too deep. So I'm glad it's surviving. The taros are cool, Taro. Really cool, these little miniature ones, and then these bigger ones here, those seem to be doing fine. The pink sprites are ones that I thought were gonna do better in deeper water, but they do not like deep water. I had a few of them die. And the water celery also, I was surprised, did not do better in the deep water. The little umbrella things are really cool. I like those. Lizard tail has done okay. I can tell that they would appreciate more shallow water, but yeah, they'll be okay. And what else? Pickerel, grasses. Oh, these marshmallow golds. These are really cool. These, I would definitely get more of these. They do a lot better in the deep water than I thought they would. The mint is another one that did not do very well in the deep water, and my watercress completely died. I think it just did not like the deep water. So all the watercress died. And there's a few of the ones that didn't quite make it. What was it? The arrowheads, I was surprised. I thought the arrowheads would do well, and they did not like deep water. And when I say deep water, I'm talking like 2 inches of water is considered deep water. So this is the only arrowhead left. You probably can't even see it. That's the only arrowhead left. And it's because I planted them, and then the water came up and killed off a lot of those plants that don't like when their root systems are 2 inches underwater. These floating planters have worked out really well. So this is basically my shallow water area, or my bog area. I'm going to make 2 more of these. So there's going to be 4 total, all right here. And they're going to have all the plants that struggle in the deep water. So you can see, no, you can't see. The mint, I'm not going to remember the names of these, the hyacinth, the mint and the hyacinth, and there's a lizard tail, and there's some water celery. There's more of the umbrellas. There's the marshmallow gold, a couple of taros. There's some more pink Sprite, and there's pink Sprite right here as well. So they like this a lot better. Most of the plants like this situation better. I even put one of those cattails in there to see what it would do. But I got a couple of shorts on what these are exactly. This is a plastic pallet that I flipped over and cut out, put a little bit of foam underneath to help it float a little bit, and then plastic welded a landscaping barrier around the edge. Filled it with leca. There's a little like shade cloth that goes under the leca so that, there's a little bit of a barrier. Oh, look, a toad. Can you see? Right there. We have about 20 toads in here right now. And they love these little floating planters. They hang out under these things all the time. So that's leca, which is light expandable clay aggregate. And so those things are just sitting in water, and the leca basically creates some structure for them to be supported. This one is probably a month old. Nah, not yet. It's probably 3 weeks old, and this one's about a week old. And the plants are all, just in that short amount of time, I can tell that they love it. They're growing really well because they're not, 2 to 5 inches deep in water. So I'm going to make a couple more of those. I think it'll really help with some of those plants that I would like to have around that just don't like the deep water. Okay, so why is this considered deep water and a lot of the other designs considered kind of multi depth? It's because my edge is hard. So the water comes up to the edge, and then there's like the wall, and so it doesn't graduate up and out. The gravel doesn't graduate up and out of the water. It comes up to that wall, kind of like a swimming pool. So the shallow areas would normally be up and out over here, where you wouldn't even be able to see the water, but the plants would be growing down into gravel and connecting to the water down below, and you wouldn't really be able to see it. My design, it doesn't have that. So my design is considered deep water. There's a lot of deep water, very little shallow water, which is why I like this so much, because it creates kind of the shallow bank effect that I don't have. This is kind of the simulation for it, which again has worked out. But I love this curb thing, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But that's why this is a deep water pond, is because most people are not doing this curb. They're doing a more natural approach that has like a graduation to it, and where the plants can kind of get into this marginal zone easier. So I expect there to be heavy plants from here all the way around to the snorkels over there. That'll be a heavily planted area. There won't be any plants under the dock or over there, I don't think at all. I don't think anything is going to grow over there. There will probably be quite a bit over here along the edge, but I'll keep it out of the middle for the kiddie pool. I tried the floating plants. No floating plants survived. They all died. They were all too much maintenance. After a little bit of winter, they all looked gross. It was not cool. No more plants. I had like the floating ring. I had the, not the hyacinth. What's the other one? Is it the hyacinth? No, it is the hyacinth. I called that the hyacinth earlier. That's a different plant. What is that one called? Anyway, the hyacinth all died. I had the water lettuce. They all turned to mush. So no more of that. Don't like that. I did get a lot of irises, and they're super cool. I'm really hoping they do well. I've got, I don't know, at least 5 varieties. And then I've got some non-flowering ones and stuff. So I need more deep water plants. Let's see. Okay. One more thing about the plants and the algae and stuff. So last year was the first summer that we had water in and we were, swimming and stuff. And the algae was out of control. It was crazy, which is one of the reasons why it's taken me so long to make this video, because I was not sure that this project was even going to work out if I couldn't figure out how to get the algae under control. And everybody I talked to just said, oh, you just got to be patient. And I was like, patience is part of it, but there's got to be something wrong. Like, there's no way I'm supposed to be this patient. And sure enough, this is the second summer now, and the algae is way better, way better. The plants have come in stronger, which I think helps a lot. And the water is now more mature, which I think helps a lot, because last year the water was still trying to, find whatever balance it needs to find. And so I was, trying to figure out, was I going to do some of the barley extract? Was I going to do algicides? And how was I going to control the algae? And patience was definitely a big part of it. Yeah, it was last year was probably 2 hours a week at the heaviest maintenance for algae. And this year it's been like a half hour a week at the heaviest. But it's quickly turned into more like a half hour every 2 or 3 weeks to maintain the algae using the vacuum. So that's been really interesting. We do have a shade cover that goes over, it's a triangle that goes over the pond that creates more shade. I'm going to put it up probably in like 2 or 3 weeks. And that will help out as well with water temperatures and algae and stuff. So yeah, it's definitely better. Man, that is a huge tadpole. Oh, scared it off. Okay. So I've never put algicide into it. I did try the barley extract, couldn't tell a difference. Tried a little bit of beneficial bacteria, that seemed to be worse. I did do the pot perm, the potassium permanganate, and then the hydrogen peroxide treatment, and that helps quite a bit. I think I need to make sure the timing on that is correct, like do it earlier in the spring and maybe later in the fall or something, because I don't know, I think some of the bugs or something don't like it, but the dragonflies seem to do fine with it and stuff. So I think I'm going to keep doing the pot perm treatment. So let's move on to some more of the wildlife stuff. When we first added water up to this height, actually before I do, while I'm on algae and water treatment and stuff, one of the things that I would do differently, which I'll talk about in the end again, is I would for sure choose my water source differently. David and some of the other guys were like, oh, you got to be really careful, don't put tap water in there. And then people were like, oh, it doesn't matter. But the people who say it doesn't matter are using well water. I just used the hose. I used city treated water. And I think that was the main problem. That was the main reason why I got so much algae the first year. I think if I was to do it again, I would be more careful. I would call around and see if I could truck in some spring water from somewhere, and introduce a better water from the beginning. And I think it wouldn't have taken so long for the pond to acclimate. When I first filled it up, all the way, the first wildlife that we saw come in was a Cooper's hawk. Came in right here and took a bath in the pond. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. We're going to get Cooper's hawks at our ponds. Never saw them again. So, you know, it's just a good omen, just a good luck charm to have a Cooper's hawk come into your pond and take a bath on the first day. So that was fun. You can't really see the fishies very well. They're down there. So we see a huge increase of birds since we have the pond, which is interesting because we used to have a lot of annoying birds like blue jays, starlings, grackles, and stuff like that. Since the pond has been installed, we get way more phoebes and sparrows and finches and doves. Every once in a while, a few pigeons. But I think because those birds have moved in with such a high interest of the water and stuff, the other annoying birds, the aggressive birds, have moved out. We don't see the aggressive birds nearly as much as we used to. So the bird population has gotten more healthy, in my opinion. There's definitely a few more nests around than I've noticed in the past, which is fun to see. So the birds, let's see. Yeah, we've seen more orioles. That's been fun. And then the next animal population that we've noticed explode were the frogs. Last year, the frogs were just kind of fun and cute. And we're like, oh, wow, there's so many frogs. You come out with the flashlight at night and you can just see frogs everywhere. This year, it kind of got out of control. We had a campfire a few weeks ago and in the backyard. And I couldn't enjoy the campfire. The frogs were so loud that it was, after like 10 minutes, my head hurt. And I was like, that's not going to work. So I scooped up a bunch of frogs one night, took them to the other side of town and put them in the creek and talked to some of those neighbors over there. And they said they noticed because it was 57 frogs that I moved that night. And after I was done, we still had a couple dozen frogs left in the pond. So, you know, it was still pretty loud at our house, but it was definitely more manageable. Didn't need earplugs. And the 57 frogs over in the other neighborhood were pretty well recognized by the neighbors over there. So that was fun. A few weeks ago, we did get our first bullfrog. I was going to see if I could find him for you. He hangs out. Oh, there he is. So we got our first bullfrog. Can you see him? I can't tell on the phone. Where is he? Oh, there he is. And I still don't know how I feel about having a bullfrog in the pond. I know they're pretty invasive, pretty aggressive, but we have 20 or so toads, probably 20 or 30 frogs, meaning tree frogs. The ones that I moved, by the way, are tree frogs, not bullfrogs. And then we have one bullfrog, this guy. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Since we put in the pond and had all the frogs, our bug population has changed dramatically. So we used to have a lot more cockroaches, spiders, slugs, snails, beetles, you know, all kinds of bugs. And since the pond, our bug population has dropped to basically zero because there's so many frogs and toads, mostly toads, that they just eat everything. They eat all the bugs around, so you don't really see anything anymore. You do see a lot of water bugs, but all the bugs that you used to see crawling around on the property in different places, they're all gone. The frogs and toads and everything cleaned them out pretty good. And the water bugs that we see are like, I don't know all the scientific names, but the water skippers are really fun. We do see a lot of dragonflies. We watch them hatch pretty regularly. I wonder if I can find. So I have videos and pictures of this, but we watch the dragonfly larva hatch on a regular basis. And that's really fun. Last year there was one week where we just had a swarm of not dragonflies, the mayflies. Like they were just swarming over the grass, like a cloud around you, and you could walk through them, and it was really cool. But no mosquitoes yet. I was kind of worried about the mosquitoes, and so I did put up some mosquito traps. I don't know how much those are helping because I don't have any mosquitoes. And so I don't know if it's because the pond is not kind to mosquitoes or because my mosquito traps are working so well. I've never seen a mosquito trap in the trap, or I've never seen a mosquito in the trap. But we don't have any mosquitoes. Every once in a while, I'll see like one of those biting gnats or biting flies, and we didn't used to get those before, so I think the pond invites those. We do get water beetles, and we get all kinds of little nymphs and larvas and stuff that I don't know what they are. Some of them I do, but most of them I don't. They're just water bugs to me. And every once in a while, somebody will get bit in the pond, like a water beetle will tag somebody in the pond, and it kind of feels like a mosquito bite. But it surprises you because it's underwater and you're not expecting it, and so it can be a little startling. But typically that's only for like a week or two, and then those beetles go away. They have like kind of a breeding period where there's a bunch of them and then they go away. So yeah, it's been interesting to see the insect population change so much with the pond. Tadpoles, when we have toads laying their eggs, they lay their eggs back over here on this wall because it's warmer. And they all hatch at the same time, and we'll have like 500 million tadpoles up against the wall, and then they all kind of like mature and spread out, and a lot of them will, I don't know, die off or get eaten or whatever because there's just a whole ton of them. But it's fun to watch the tadpoles. Right now, a lot of the tadpoles are pretty large, and so last year we had this period where all the tadpoles actually became frogs at the same time. Little froglets. And so I have pictures of, and probably a few shorts, of just frogs everywhere. So many. For like 2 weeks, we just had hundreds and hundreds of frogs everywhere. They were like smaller than your pinky fingernail. But they didn't survive because there's too many of them. There's just not enough food for all of them. And so a lot of them just died off. But several of them obviously matured. I just saw a huge tadpole over here. I was going to see if I could get a good shot of it. Yeah, I can't tell what's going on my camera. Yeah, it's too hard to see on the camera. All right, so lots of dragonflies, mayflies, no mosquitoes. I saw a horsefly one time. Oh, bats. There's a lot more bats. I'm about to make a couple of bat houses because the bats are super fun to see out here. They come out every night and they just kind of fly above the pond, and my kids like to take the pebbles and throw them in the air and watch them swoop down, and yeah, it's super fun to see the bats. I love bats. I did see a possum, and I have had more rats and mice, but I can't tell if that's from the pond. I think that might be from the chickens. Well, I know it's at least somewhat from the chickens. And then I've seen more lizards, a lot more lizards, and I think that's because of the pond. So that's been interesting. There's a huge bumblebee on top of the irises over there. And just barely put minnows in, so we'll see how that goes. David doesn't recommend that, but I don't know, so I just had to try it. Sorry, David. Okay, so I'm over halfway through now with this video. Are you jumping in?
Yeah.
All right.
Are you gonna keep videoing me?
Yeah, as long as you're not too loud that people can't hear me or something. Okay, one thing that's kind of interesting is this perimeter barrier right here. I have not seen anybody else do this perimeter barrier, but I really wanted my edge to have certain characteristics to it, and I decided to do it this way, and I have no regrets. I think this is an awesome way to do it. The only thing that I regret is that the construction of this thing was a nightmare. It took forever. It was very customized. The form boards and everything were crazy. I have shorts on it. Go look at it. It's insane because it's a hovering, floating form board. But basically, I like this because it creates a barrier. So I don't have leaves and debris and things that are blowing across the lawn and just blowing straight into the pond and creating a mess. This barrier keeps things from just rolling into the pond, which I really like. I like that this is a protection to the pond. I also like that it's a walking path. We walk on the walking path all the time. We just do circles around the pond. We use it, the dog uses it. It's great as a walking path to just kind of naturally use. And I like that it's a hard edge on this side, and I'm not managing a bunch of things in the water edge. It's just a clean cut barrier. The problem with it that I think most people, well, the construction is the main problem, but the other problem that I think some people shy away from is that it obviously doesn't look natural. It's not like it looks like a river's edge or a creek edge. It's obviously man-made, but yeah, that's okay with me. I don't mind the aesthetic that it brings because I find a lot of value in the practicality, functionality of it. And so I'm very happy with it. I don't regret not having a natural edge. I don't regret not having big boulders. I don't want big boulders and big rocks to have to deal with. I just want something that serves the purpose that I want it to without trying to act like it's some kind of a natural feature of my property or something, because obviously it's not. And aquascape guys, like, they kind of pride themselves in making things look like as if they're natural, and that really just wasn't what I was going for. I was going for something for the family, not something for the nature. I did the exposed aggregate. So this exposed aggregate and then exposed aggregate on the bottom wall there, and I like how that turned out. Perfect. And I like that there's no liner exposed, so this covers the liner. I really like that protection of the liner. And then the water barrier, obviously I don't have water going in, and the wind doesn't blow. Okay, I already said that. Let me show you the diagram of what I did. All right, this is basically what I did. So pond, the water line, and this is a cinder block underneath the liner, and this is dirt. So this is the dirt that the people dug. I put a cinder block and I put the liner up over the cinder block, wrapped it around, and then cut it off right there. And then I encased the cinder block and the liner in cement. So the water level can come up quite a bit before it gets up to the top and is able to leak out. So it hasn't ever got that high because my overflow on the other side of the pond is about mid-level on the cinder block wall. And this design has worked out really well, but as you can tell, the form boards for this are going to be a nightmare because you cannot stake your form boards into the ground like you normally would, because you'd be piercing the liner. So you have to make a floating form board. It's a friggin' nightmare, but it worked out pretty well in the end. I was also impressed. I used the water level mechanisms to get my leveling for this, and that bottom wall is perfectly level. I mean, within an 1/8 inch easily. It's probably within a 1/16 of an inch. And then this outer one, I messed up in a few places, so it's not quite as level. It's more like within a 1/2 inch, maybe an inch. But the water level system worked out really great because I was not going to pay hundreds of dollars for a laser level. Sorry. Let's see. The plank, the dock. This is pressure treated wood. That's redwood. The little bridge over there for the overflow is redwood. It's really important to have access to the deep end. You know, like you just saw him running off and jumping in the deep end. If we didn't have the docks and the planks, you wouldn't have that. The only thing is that that's the only hazard for kids. So yeah, I'll come back to that in a second. One thing that surprised me was the water temperature. The water temperature changes way faster than I thought it would. I thought that the water temperature would take like a week or 2 weeks to acclimate to rising temperatures in the summer. But it's actually like on a 24-hour cycle. Like if we get a spike in temperature, the spike the spike of the water temperature will follow within about 24 hours, which I was surprised by that. I don't have a bubbler in the middle, so the water stays stratified. So the water at the bottom of the pond is about 5 degrees cooler than the top. And so that helps, with the health of the water and stuff. But it just surprised me how fast the water temperature changed. When I put more of the floating planters in, that will help stabilize water temperatures. When the plants grow in more, that'll help. When I put up the shade cover, that'll help. Having the dock in provide some shade, that helps. So last year was definitely kind of an extreme example of fluctuations in temperature. It'll get better, but it's just something that surprised me. Okay, what are the pros and cons? So the pros of the pond are, one, that it's year-round use. We use this every day, year-round. When we're not swimming in it, we walk it. So if it's the dead of winter and there's no chance we're going to be getting in the pond swimming, we still do laps around to check out what's going on, how the plants are doing, how the animals are doing, or even just to sit out here. We spend a lot of time just sitting on the bench. It's a very good meditation place, this spot. I've got 5 benches right here by the pond, and then a table and chairs kind of over off ways. So we spend a lot of time just hanging out. That's what he's doing right now. He just likes floating there with his goggles and just staring at all the different stuff that's under there moving around. The tadpoles, fish, whatever. So that's probably the biggest pro, is that it is just so fun and so alive. And she sees a bunch of fish. She's going after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 minnows right there. Just gonna see if we can get some. So that's one of the funnest things, is that we use it every day. Whereas a swimming pool, I've never had a swimming pool, so I couldn't speak to it exactly, but it doesn't seem like you're gonna go take a lap around your swimming pool every day. I don't know. So that's really cool. Daily interaction. Also the convenience of having it in your backyard, which I think is something that if you have a swimming pool, you might be able to talk to better than I can, but having a swimming pool in your backyard is so convenient. Having a pond in your backyard is so convenient. If you want to just go jump in real quick, it takes 10 minutes. I like doing night swims. I come out here and swim in the summer, 11 o'clock night, midnight. I think it's super fun with a flashlight under there looking at everything, the plants and animals and stuff, and how their activity changes at night. So that's really fun. The other thing that I didn't expect, that I appreciate more and more about this, is how kid-friendly it is. It's baby friendly, because we have the kid zone right here, which is about 1 foot to 1.5 foot deep. So a lot of kids, even adults, like to hang out right here, just kind of sit in this little pool area. It's a very friendly area. And then if you walk over to the edge, of course, it drops off, and so kids, can't go over there without dropping off. And then if they're on the dock, I'll go show you this. If they're on the dock, they can fall off into the deep end, kind of. See, I don't know if you can tell, but there's a curb that sticks out in front of the dock. So you actually have to, if you're going to jump in, you have to clear the curb to land into the deep end. So you got to jump, 12 inches. But if you were to slip off and fall in, you would only fall in 1 foot or 2 before you hit the ledge, and you have something to step onto and up. So I did that on purpose. But this is really the only area where a kid could fall in. And then obviously the plank, if they're out over there, it's not very kid friendly. But little kids, this is really the only hazardous area. They could walk around the edge here, like a 2-year-old. We've had many 2-year-olds over. They could walk along this edge here, and it's really not that big a deal for the parents. The parents don't feel freaked out and paranoid about their kid falling in, because if they fall in, there's no deep water. They get wet, and they might flail around in the shallows before they get their footing or whatever. But it's not like a deep end. So it's much more kid friendly. I need to talk about the permeable pavers. I haven't talked about this. Do I have that on my list? Did I just skip that part? Oh, it's the very end. Okay. So yeah, very kid friendly. Not the same kind of deep end threat that you have with a conventional swimming pool. A big pro is the wildlife. I'm kind of a naturalist. I really like the wildlife. Again, you see him over there just kind of walking around, looking and stuff. So yeah, I love the wildlife part of it. So if you don't like this kind of natural environment, it might not be your thing, but I grew up swimming in ditches and canals and lakes and rivers, and so I love that part of it. The water feels comfortable. I don't get chlorine burns, and when you get out, you don't feel like you have to take a shower. The water just feels better. It's kind of hard to explain until you experience it. The water does get cloudy as you start to swim, especially if it's like 10 kids doing a bunch of cannonballs. Endless snorkeling is a plus. Meditation space, where it keeps alive. Yeah, maintenance is decreasing by the week. Okay, so those are the pros. Here's the cons. You have to be committed to the process and to the project. And what I mean by that is not just the construction, but also the maintenance. Like, you have to enjoy the maintenance of it. So I'll come out here most days and look and see like, oh, I need to clean up, whatever little algae or whatever project thing. And I don't think to myself, oh man, I really don't want to do that. I'm just dreading that. I enjoy it. I get in and I'll wade around and I have this little net and I'll have fun just kind of scooping up whatever little things of algae I want to collect, or just cleaning up or moving plants around and moving gravel around, or like, I enjoy that. So if you need to be able to enjoy that if you're going to commit to one of these, because it's definitely not maintenance free. It's just more of an enjoyable maintenance than a lot of things, if you're into that. So you have to be able to enjoy that, including dealing with the algae, which I said the first year is a nightmare. I underestimated the gravel. So getting into the permeable paver stuff. This gravel is great. I love the color. I love the way it feels. It's very soft. It's a black and white pea gravel. That's what it's called. So it's not sharp. It's not river rock. I guess it's kind of river rock. Anyway, but it moves around a lot. It's so soft and round that when you step in it, it just squishes around like sand. And so last year it was just, I spent quite a bit of time moving gravel back into place, because it's got this gradual slope, and every time you step into it, it pushes gravel down, and we were pushing gravel into the deep end and stuff. And so I really tried hard to figure out a solution for that, and I bought some of these concrete pavers thinking that would help, and it did, but it kind of created its own problem. And so in the end, I came up with these permeable pavers for driveways. So this is something that you would do for a kind of a natural looking driveway or a walkway or something like that. And I bought ones that I thought were, flexible and robust and whatever. And I put them in just to hold the gravel in place. And it has worked really well. I'm really glad that I did that. That's probably one of the best ideas that I had in this whole thing, because I put them in this little kiddie pool area. This is really the biggest problem area because people spent so much time here. So it's just in this area. I moved a bunch of the gravel out. I put a whole bunch of permeable pavers in where I wanted them, and then I raked the gravel back on top of the permeable pavers. So it's important that they're permeable so that the water is still filtering down through the gravel. And it's important that they have some retention so that they're holding the gravel in place, and they're all connected so it's not shifting around like a bunch of little pieces of a puzzle that you have to keep putting back into place. So every once in a while, I'll get my rake, which I'll show you in here in a second, and I'll scoop up some gravel and kind of cover in some of the gravel that's come out of the permeable pavers in these different areas. But for the most part, it works really well, way better than it was before. And I wish I would have thought of that from the beginning. I wish that was part of the original design, not something I had to do afterwards. Because honestly, it was a huge pain to put it in afterwards. So the permeable pavers Great idea. Wish I would have thought of that way before I had water in there. Like if I would do it over again, I would put them in halfway through the gravel. So I'd put a little bit of gravel, and then at the right moment I'd put the permeable pavers, and then I would load the gravel on top of it dry before I ever added water. That would work way better. But, you know, lesson learned. This is the rake that I made for gravel. It's a cement rake for moving cement around. I got it from Home Depot. And I rounded the corners off and sanded it down to be nice and soft. Therefore, I don't risk damaging anything. But that's what I use to move the gravel around. It works really well. And yeah, I was using other stuff before, like a yard rake, garden rake, stuff like that. But that definitely is the ticket right there. So that's really cool. Plants also help keep things in place. So I put permeable pavers in this little corner because we maintain the skimmer. But like even in this area, I don't have permeable pavers, and you can see kind of how the gravel kind of sinks and flattens out and then gets pushed out and then drops off, and it's not ideal. And then where there's plants, it keeps it in better shape. It's higher, it feels firmer. So when the plants come in, they'll help keep the gravel in place better. Another con. Am I on cons? Cons, yeah, okay. Another cons is just the cleaning out the skimmer, which I talked about every day. One thing I don't know if is a con is that the interaction is different than a pool, so kids kind of have to learn how to interact with the pond differently. For example, you can't exactly play sharks and minnows like you do in a conventional pool. You got to kind of figure out a different way to play it. There's plenty of games to play. We like to play water ball with like a big watermelon type thing, and you kind of push it around, make goals and stuff. So that's been interesting. Okay, so what would I do differently? I've got probably just a few minutes left. Hour and a half. I told you it's gonna be long. Yeah, congratulations whoever made it this far. What do I do differently? I would definitely put in permeable pavers before the water. Permeable pavers is a good idea, but I thought of it too late. I would do more marginal area, which is what these are. These floating planters are kind of a makeshift marginal area because I don't have that. It's a deep pond, and so this is kind of a makeshift marginal area. So more marginal area, figuring out that way. I would think about that differently. I would do different plants because it's a deep water pond. And then the other thing would be to figure out the water. The first water that I put in it wouldn't be hose water. I would put in spring water from somewhere. I'd get it trucked in from somewhere. I don't know how, but I think that contributed a lot to the algae that I had last year. Things that I did right. So the 3/8 inch hose, air hose system, I think was a great idea. So overkill on the air hose and the air pumps and stuff, I think was great because I can dial it back. But if you put in something that's too small, it's really hard to make it bigger. So 3/8 inch air hose with a 3/4 line coming across to the manifold, and then 3-inch pipes for the bubblers with 5-inch pipes for the enhanced bubbler. All of that stuff, I think I did that right. The 100-watt pump was right. I mean, I almost got a 200-watt pump because I was so worried about having enough flow. But I decided I'll buy the smaller one first, and then if it's not enough, I'll just buy the 200. If it's too much, then I can downsize. Turns out that the 100-watt is plenty, and so I'll probably go with the 60-watt as my backup. The perimeter curbing, I did that right. As far as my interest and what I wanted, this worked out really well for what I wanted. Even though it was a pain in the butt to do, the construction of it was really hard. It definitely met my needs. Okay, and then the last one, this shallow area. I think I did that right. I think having this area was a great idea. I think if I would have had that width of planted area all the way around, you wouldn't really have a kiddie pool area, and that it would just be hard. It would be hard for little kids because it'd be deep areas only. I'd probably have to put in like a raft for kids or something. I don't know what I would do, but this has worked out really well. Okay, I think we're there. Let's see. Yeah, so thanks for hanging out. This project has been insane. I did not know if it was going to be a good idea or not, and so I've waited a year to find out that it is a good idea. It has worked out. I do recommend it. It takes a lot of work, but it seems to be worth it so far. And I, am glad for that. I would have hated to get to this point and then make a video saying, don't do it. It would have been really sad to say, I've been in this for 2 years and this is a bad idea. It's the worst thing I've ever done and I have huge regrets and I curse David Pagan Butler and stuff. And, that's not the case. So I think that's great that it's great that it's worked out. And so I do recommend it for anybody that's looking for a ginormous project. But if you go and do your research, there's all kinds of people that do these types of things in very small formats. Like you can make them the size of a hot tub. In fact, if you look at my shorts, I made a prototype. I had a prototype for about a year before I built this that was in a Shurlite storage container. And that one had algae problems too. And I learned a lot from it. I should have learned a lot more, but I learned a lot from it. But yeah, I had a prototype that was the size of a little storage container, like a Shurlite tub, I think is what they call them. Or you can make big ones. I mean, I've seen videos where people are making these that are like an acre in size, and so it just kind of depends on what you're up for. Some people make them so that they're structurally a lot less structural. Like they just kind of put some mud, shape some mud around and throw in a liner in, and they don't really put any cement structuring or anything like that. And there's people that put a lot of cement structure. Mine's probably a little over-engineered in that way, which is fine. But yeah, the water level for the overflow is about 6 inches higher than it is right now. So if you go back and look at the video and the water level, it's actually kind of at probably a mid area. It'll probably go down maybe 3 or 4 more inches before I fill it back up. The rain would fill it up 6 more inches from what it is right now. And then in the fall, like in September, I'll stop filling it up. And it'll go down probably 6 or 8 inches from what it is now. And I just let it evaporate because it's the end of the swimming season. And the rain's gonna start picking up, and then when the rain comes, it fills it up, pretty quickly, which is nice. So, anyway, thanks for coming along. I owe a lot to the pond building community. I owe a lot to David Pagan Butler, to all those who have made videos, and so I hope this helps out for those that are looking for help, looking for ideas. If you have any questions, I guess leave them in the comments. I will post videos on my channel about the pond and stuff. But like I said, this is my personal channel, my family channel. So it's not intended to be like a pond channel. I won't be doing a lot of like hours and hours answering questions and like showing the development, anything like that. It's pretty well is where it's going to be for now. But if you look in the description, there will be a link to the playlist, and then the playlist will have a lot of shorts that will answer other questions that you might have if this is what you're into. And if you're a family member that's looking for more of a family update and less of a pond tour, I apologize for putting you through the past hour and a half.